Okay. I'm David Tripp, and this is, as I said, our final messy conversation for the fall quarter. And then we'll be in a recess for the holidays and come back the second week of winter quarter. I don't know the exact date that is for uh, for our winter program. And today, we're very lucky to be gathered together to be in conversation about chartering an NAACP chapter here at Antioch University. We've got Pia Alexander and Stephanie Helms Pickett, who've been overseeing that work. And hopefully, we'll have a guest from the NAACP National Field Organizing Office, Jimel Calliste, should be joining us shortly. As always, we ask that you keep yourself on mute until you're called on to join the conversation. And anything, any questions, comments, or just, hey, I want to join the conversation, put any of that in the chat, and Sarah Beth will call on you in the second half of our time together today. We're really glad you're here. Sarah Beth?
Thank you, David. I asked Pia and Stephanie to grace us with another messy conversation. And one of the topics that they were very excited about is a potential relationship between Antioch University and the NAACP. And it's because of the excitement that was expressed that we are here today. And so we may have our guest join us, but I think we have enough information and energy around this, as well as the need to really connect ourselves to organizations that have similar initiatives and investments. So with that, I'd like to ask Pia and Stephanie to get our conversation started. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'll dive into some of the history and also the actual process of chartering, what our institution would need to do in order to charter a chapter. But I do want to, or a college unit, which is what they're called. At the local level, it's called a chapter. And then in a college campus or across multiple locations like we have at Antioch, it would be a unit or an institutional unit. And so I'll dive in and talk about a little bit of that, but I wanted to allow some space for my wonderful co-chairs, Stephanie Helms Pickett and Maria Judith Rodriguez, to just say hello and bring their own just greetings for the evening. And then I'll dive in with some more of the content. So I'll pass it over to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Pia. Greetings for the evening. So Stephanie Helms Pickett, she, her pronouns. I'm excited to be with you all here. And as I recall in my memory, I was a chartering member of the NAACP chapter at my undergraduate institution. So this is very close and near and dear to my heart. So excited that we are considering and exploring this at Antioch. And I will turn it over to Maria Ju.
Thank you, Pia and Stephanie, and hi, everyone. Good evening. It's just 4:05 right now in San Diego, but it's starting to get dark pretty early, so we can say we're all on evening time. Very excited about being here again for another messy conversations and looking forward to the conversation tonight. Going back to you, Pia.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to just give some space to the person that I've been interacting with and to just share how my sort of knowledge of the NAACP has grown, particularly over the past year, I would say, because I've had a lot of interaction with the NAACP from childhood through today. As a child, I was very fortunate to be in a local community in Jamaica, Queens, that has a very, very active NAACP community chapter. And I was able to be part of that and also part of some other amazing experiences that they have just in high school and also in college. So I was a part of it for a very long time. And then there was a big gap. And then thankfully, I was able to reinitiate and re-engage with the NAACP and joined again in my 20s after having been out of college for a bit. And that was through my work with other women's organizations like the Links Incorporated and a few other organizations where there were members that overlapped in both. So through that organization, I had the pleasure of meeting Miss Paula Brown Edmay, who connected me with who I was hoping would be able to join us and who has joined us this evening, Mr. Jimel Calliste. So Jimel, welcome. I got the ball rolling and just got some of it started, but I wanted to welcome you and to also just share your bio. I know it was sent out to folks, but if you could indulge me for the moment, I would love to share just a little bit about your background with the NAACP, if you're okay with that. I don't know if you're going to be on camera this evening or off camera, but we wanted to just welcome you to Antioch. And I'll leave a moment before I share your bio to just bring that greeting and say hello.
No, no, absolutely. Got a little caught up in traffic, so making my way back to my apartment. But no, I'm super excited to be in community with you all.
Awesome.
And I'm excited to share. But yeah, just I'll wait for your introduction and then get the ball rolling.
Awesome. I appreciate that so much. So just to share a little bit about Jimel. Jimel was born in Brooklyn, New York, and attended high school for civil rights and law on the Thomas Jefferson campus. And as an activist, and certainly as a young activist, he's really dedicated much of his life to defending the rights and improving the lives of the underserved. So Jimel served as president of the Bloomsburg University NAACP, and he led the founding committee in chartering the collegiate chapter. So certainly from an experiential place, did it himself and is now an expert in that area in leading a critical campaign for voting registration as a part of that, and also diversity amongst campus students, faculty, and staff, which, as we know, is a job into and of itself. In 2019, he joined the NAACP's Next Gen program, which provides comprehensive leadership and advocacy training for young adults on a mission to become the next generation of civil rights leaders. And in 2020, he served as a democracy fellow where he managed virtual organizers to phone bank and text recruited volunteers to mobilize the indirect relational voter turnout program, which is a whole entire specific program, the IRVT. Since then, he has served as president of the Wilkes-Barre NAACP, as well as the advisor of the Pennsylvania NAACP State Conference Youth and College Division, and notably serving as one of the youngest in history for both positions. Currently is the National Field Organizer for the Youth and College Unit for NAACP. And so we just really want to say thank you for being here and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And I'm remiss, I was noting earlier that I wasn't sure if we should refer to you as Jimel or Mr. Calliste. So whatever you prefer, we are happy to move forward with. Just let us know this evening.
Jimel is totally fine. But thank you all for having me. Super excited to be in community with you all. That is, I always am shocked when I hear my bio, but that's a lot to say a little. It's been a journey. My time with the association has been a fruitful one. And I'm super excited to bring my knowledge of the field to this conversation. I will actually be sharing a slide deck with you all, but as mentioned, I don't have the capabilities of sharing, but we'll have some supplemental resources for you all that I'll share post our conversation. But didn't want that to get in the way of what we can talk about right now. And so as mentioned, I come with a wealth of knowledge from a youth leader standpoint, from an advisor standpoint, from a very local, regional, and national perspective. And so I'm super excited to always be in conversation with folks who are interested in chartering new units, because it was how I got my start, chartering and being a part of the founding committee at my university. And so very much aware of the hurdles and red tape that can arise across campuses when you're trying to organize, and um, definitely understand the plight of getting folks interested. And so thank you all for just taking the time to first and foremost just be willing to listen to me, and get on the call, because I know how hard it is to get folks on the call, even to just listen. And so definitely want to thank you all for taking the time to do that. But I'll jump right into it and just share a brief history of the NAACP, and then kind of get into the process of chartering a unit, and then what the first 90 days looks like after you charter a unit, and then kind of round us out and like what it can look like to plan for the future. Once you've chartered your unit, what does it look like to plan for the future? A lot of times, and we see areas or universities have a spark where it's 1 or 2 years, and then next thing you know, we don't hear from them ever again. And so one thing that we wanted to do was be intentional about like, what does the first 90 days look like, because then that will impact what the next 3-4 years can look like for your unit as well. And so anytime I'm in the conversation with what can be the founding committee, I'm always encouraging them to think of this as a long-term investment. If you are a part of the founding committee, you are putting your hat in the ring, being willing to orient new members, being willing to mentor the leaders that come after you, being willing to share the nuances and things that you learn on the campuses and things like that. And so this founding committee that will organize is so crucial for the longevity of the group on campus, regardless of however that makeup is. And so really briefly, so the NAACP Youth and College Division was founded in 1935 by a young lady named Miss Juanita Jackson Mitchell. She was our first national director, and in 1935, after about 20 something years since the inception of the association, this young lady, who was the daughter of a branch president, stood up at our national convention and urged the national board to take up interest in a youth division. And they thought, who better to lead that division than the young lady who stood up and asked for it? And so Miss Juanita Jackson Mitchell helped build our foundation and was the mother of the Youth and College Division, serving as our national director from 1937 to 1953. One of the cool things about Miss Juanita Jackson Mitchell is that she was actually the first Black woman to pass the bar in the state of Maryland. And so we always love to highlight Miss Mitchell and all that we do, even so where we have a gala at our national convention in her honor, and it's like the hot ticket for our convention when folks come out. And so we do everything in her honor, and appreciate her fortitude and insight for the division, to give us the possibility to do the work that we do now. So the NAACP has gone through many different iterations, but I'm excited to be a part of the group that we have now. Throughout from the 50s to where we are now, the NAACP has gone through the fight for equality and justice. We've continued to struggle through the 80s and 90s, registering voters, and we did a survival of the HBCUs in the 90s. We did a Stop the Violence and Start the Love campaign. I think in the early 2000s, we started to, late 90s, early 2000s, we started to focus more on training and starting to build capacity when it comes to youth leaders. And so we did a lot of marches, and then during that time, we started to see a lot of our state conferences building their identities and starting to see new units pop up and do great things. In the early 2000s, we had a Vote Hard campaign, which is one of the campaigns that a lot of our older members remember. We registered about 50,000 young people to vote. That was early in the social media era, and so we're super proud of that feat. And then, kind of like in the early 2010s, we started to get more on the ground, and we called that building Black political power. During that time, we had about 5 national directors, and so a lot of things were shifting and changing in the association. But now, I like to call our iteration of staff from the field to the front office. All of our staffers on the youth and college team started on a college campus, started with an NAACP unit less than 10 years ago. And so all of us come with a wealth of knowledge from the field. Our interim national director is actually a charter member of his unit in Texas as well. And so we are excited to be a breath of fresh air for what most people like to say is a out of touch organization. We don't believe that, but we understand what folks are saying. And so we like to brag anytime we can that we build leaders from inter-organizationally. You can become a professional from the skills and tactics and theories and things that you're learning within the association. And so super excited, like I mentioned, to just be in conversation with you all as it relates to chartering a new unit. And so for chartering a new unit, the steps are fairly simple. Once you've gotten interest, the ball and snowball starts to roll very fast after that. I think the hardest thing for most is getting a core group of at least 25 individuals to commit to joining the group and paying their $10 for membership. Once you've gotten that, there's about 5 letters of support that you're going to have to gather, and they're fairly simple. So you would get a letter of intent from the organizing committee's chairperson, however the group would figure that piece out. So that chair would write a letter of intent, basically saying, we here at Antioch University are interested in organizing an NAACP on campus. From there, they'd get a letter of support from an advisor. So a faculty advisor on campus, somebody that the group trusts and knows that has their best interest in mind. They would work with that individual, and that person would write a letter of support for them. Outside of that, there are 3 other letters, and those would come, one from the overseeing adult branch. So whichever adult branch is closest to the university or whichever location you're planning on using would be the overseer of this unit, and they would write a letter of support. The final two would come from your state conference. And so that is just ensuring that you have the support of your state conference. That piece is fairly easy. We have a landing page online that outlines and gives templates for all of these documents. So it's essentially pretty much plug and play. I've seen a lot of folks just take exactly word for word and just submit those documents. That's totally fine. If you wanted to tailor it and make it super specific, that's totally fine as well. Once you've done that piece, that's the packet portion of your charter process. You have completed that. You've taken digital copies. You would submit that physically to our headquarters, and then digitally you would submit it to myself. We have board meetings quarterly thing where you would have the opportunity to get approved in front of the board of directors. And so from there, and that process, as I mentioned, goes pretty quickly once you've gotten the support and of your peers, of your colleagues, of your faculty members in the state conference, you're good to go. On the back end, there's a second half of the process that includes securing an EIN number, having unit elections, ensuring that all procedural things for the organization are done, making sure that you're in communication with your state conference, because now there's going to be some expectations and responsibilities of the group outside of the university. And so always want to make sure that that's kind of stated and understood, that outside of what you can achieve on campus, there's going to be an expectation that you add to the NAACP universe outside of your campus. And so letting us know things that are working on your campus, what's not working on your campus, how can we support, how can we do better. There, within those, that's when we shift to that first 90 days. I want to stop there if there's any questions on the templates or the letters of support in that packet portion of the process.
Yes, Jimel, I just wanted to share just quickly that there are some questions that are coming into the chat, and I know that our facilitators will also support in asking some of those questions. But I wanted to also just name that we're at about 7:25. We usually go until about 7:30 and then open up a fuller Q&A. But one aspect of what you shared that I wanted to just highlight, because before you came on, I was sharing how I was connected to the NAACP through the years. But I do think it's really important. Antioch is very, very focused, particularly right now, on how how we describe our narratives and how we enter into truth telling around interest and action and activism at our institution, particularly because Antioch exists in multiple places and spaces. As you know, we're not in one campus. We describe it as locations. We have, multiple locations from East all the way to West Coast. But the one aspect that I wanted to bring up was really this interest was sparked by students. We have at Antioch, we have an anti-racism task force, but we also, within that task force, and during the time that task force was formed around 2020, there were other movements and student groups that were really centered on activism at the university Black Student Union, Justice Leadership Council, and others. I mean, there were multiple groups that were forming, but one group, the Council for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, SETI, they really came to both the ARTF, the Anti-Racism Task Force, and to our chancellor with some very specific, in a stance of activism, with some very specific, requests and demands around what does it look like to have an anti-racist institution? What does it look like to have an institution that really is centered on social justice principles? And so one item that was on the list that I think was top of mind for multiple groups, and this is the other thing that I think we need to know about activism, multiple groups may have this idea and then it crystallizes in a certain way, but one of their specific asks was, how do we get an NAACP chapter on our, for our institution? And so I really just appreciated that you shared about the student-led piece and the student activism piece, because there are members of the ARTF present on this meeting, and also other members of the Antioch community who've been instrumental in helping to start to build student governance. So I'll leave some of those questions for the Q&A time, but I wanted to I know you missed my small introductions. I wanted to give you a little bit even more of context that, yes, this is an environment where students are looking for multiple ways of really lifting up social justice and anti-racism at this institution. So thank you. I don't want to derail you from your talk. I just wanted to make sure you had that as some of the context as well.
No, perfect. Thank you. And so don't have much else for the process outside of what I've shared. But as mentioned, the first 90 days, we have a loop that we kind of take new units through, where we have orientation, where we kind of get you prepped and prepared for what the NAACP schedule is and what it looks like. There's check-ins with your state conferences, coordinating and connecting you with your regional leadership, just so that you're aligned with the expectations and responsibilities for your specific area. And again, as we know, this university has locations, and so there's going to be a unique opportunity in the formation of this university to see what that can look like, and how we can accommodate a university of this style. And so I don't want to take you too far down the details of the first 90 days, but we put a big emphasis on just making sure that the unit is aware of the NAACP norms, branding, expectations, messaging, and just including you and engulfing you into that entire NAACP universe. And then from a longevity standpoint, just making sure that on the back end, the work that I do is connecting with the organizing committee, and then working around a 4 or 5 year plan to ensure that the unit retains membership and continues to be active and engaged in whichever community for the years to come. But I'll pause there and kind of stop for any questions.
Thank you, Jimel. I really appreciate the effort, especially around transparency of you just sharing the process and how this works, and how your organization stays connected. We have a couple of questions here already in the chat. We'll start with David, and then Cien, and then if you would ask your question, David, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted some background for our broader conversation about what would it mean to have a chapter of the NAACP at Antioch? What sort of responsibilities are we incurring? What kinds of possibilities are there in terms of that partnership, and so on? So anything on that would be lovely.
Absolutely. I think it's a it's an opportunity for students to dream as widely as they would want to. When I can speak from my personal experience, uh, at my university, we wanted folks to have a space to feel seen. First and foremost, I think that there's always an opportunity for the Black Student Union to step in, and there's always that conversation of, well, if we have a Black Student Union, what's the need for an NAACP, and will they compete and for things? But I think that the NAACP serves a different purpose and a function. I think when you think of the NAACP, one first folks think of like civic education, um, civic engagement, professional development, things like that. I think so. As far as the responsibilities, outside of just maintaining, or to be transparent, as outside of just maintaining the 25 members, there isn't much of a heavy responsibility. And so there's not a checklist of things that we're going to have to be worried about making sure is completed. But this will be student led, and so whatever they can dream for the university, whatever the constitutional guidelines are for them to operate in the campus universe, we encourage them to take full advantage of it, to be stewards of truth in the university, to push for equity, to push for the university to be a place that can speak for the underserved, or allow that group to speak for the underserved. Or in my time at Bloomsburg in Pennsylvania, we had an opportunity to connect with the young Dems and young Republicans, bring them in for panels, kind of operate as a organization that can, again, be a steward of truth first and foremost, but then also a place for students to dream. And so there's so much that I don't necessarily want to limit, and don't know what students are focusing on at Antioch, but anything within that realm that falls within the constitutional guidelines. We're not telling them to go outside of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question, Cian, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, it was really just kind of a one-off question, but Antioch is, Jimel, if you're not aware, I'm not sure if you are, we have like a lot of campuses, like
Mhm.
4, 5 or something, across the country. So I was curious if this would be, if we've thought about it, this would be a single chapter, for all campuses uniting, like all of them, or if there would be individual chapters at different campuses.
So I definitely think this is a unique um grouping, but I do think that I'm going to try to work with our field team to see if there's a possibility to keep the unit together. I definitely do know that just because of geographical things, and we have different regions as well, and so this would be a unit that would probably be across a couple of regions, but definitely going to try to see if there's a possibility to keep the unit together. But then it would primarily be based on just what your capacity is. If there's a virtual space that you all will commit to hosting, so that all campuses can get together, can have equal opportunity and capacity to do things, and however that's discussed and straightened out within the group, and then we'd be able to go from there.
Thank you again. Stephanie, did you want to add something there or go after Clarence?
Please let Clarence go for it.
Hey,
Thank you.
Clarence, please ask your question if you would.
The gentle woman from North Carolina is very accommodating, isn't she?
Always,
I
always.
I simply wanted to understand, and I'm glad Sienna asked what she asked, because I was trying to envision what would an Antioch unit chapter look like. I got involved in NAACP when I moved to Los Angeles. Not being starstruck, I originally joined the Beverly Hills Hollywood chapter, which founded the Image Awards. So I've been working for years with them. I created the first NAACP Theater Awards for them and Theater Festival, and produced the actual award show for several years. But when COVID came and Black Lives Matter became front and center, my membership card expired, and I have not renewed or been active since. Even though obviously the Image Awards still goes on and the theater festival, the theater awards still happen. What I learned through the process of being a member in LA is that different chapters seem to have different focuses. Obviously, Beverly Hills Hollywood is pretty obvious. It's in Hollywood. They have the legacy of the Image Awards, blah, 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 blah. One year I was disgruntled and joined the LA chapter, and their focus was very, very different. And then I got a little bit disillusioned prior to COVID because I felt like the Beverly Hills Hollywood chapter should respond to some of these police incidents that were happening beyond the George Floyd situation. And because I thought that any chapter of the NAACP should really be focused on the social justice aspects, regardless of what their local focuses were. And obviously, the Image Awards is a big deal. And I really hate that they now allow anyone to vote. I wish it had remained that members only could vote. And I thought that that would increase the membership continually by having people have to be a member. But I asked the question about how would you attract, or what would be the pitch to attract youth and student members, because you made a comment earlier, Jimel, that a lot of people have the attitude that the NAACP is kind of like out of step, out of touch. And that's been going on for at least a decade, because many times, depending on the leadership, they don't present themselves as they did in the 60s and the 70s, and possibly even the early 80s. So what could be a good pitch for us? Obviously, as Sienna pointed out, we would have a very unique situation because we have multiple campuses, and we really need to be one organization, I believe. The NAACP, in case no one said it, and I don't think anyone did, is open to all races. It was founded by multiple races of people. It wasn't just a Black organization. It was founded by multiple races of people, and it still is a multiracial organization, even though it presents largely African American in its image. But I would like to know, moving into this 21st century, what would a unit for Antioch really look like, and what would our pitch be? And certainly what could be some of the tenets of our focus as an organization that is steeped in tradition, but yet is very much 21st century ready with social justice issues.
I think that's a great question. That's a great question. I think there's an opportunity for development. I think that at the root of it, the NAACP has, Youth and College Division specifically, has been a training ground for activists, has been a training ground for Miss Juanita Jackson Mitchell said that she wanted to create a space for young militant youth leaders. So I think that in any pitch, there should always be the position of how you can develop as a young professional, as a young activist, how you can learn to work across communities, how you can learn to advocate for marginalized communities. I think specifically to your point, and especially in predominantly white institutions, hammering home the fact that our organization was not solely founded by uh, black, black folks is super important because it allows us to replicate what we're going to have to do in the real world. We're going to have to work together. We're going to have to work across communities. We're going to have to work in line step in order to see change. And so I think that for a youth, and specifically college perspective, I always push the potential of development. And we have so many vehicles to assist in your development as a young leader, as a young person. Why not take the opportunity? Again, the NAACP Youth and College Division has done the best that we can to try to stay as up to date and with the times as possible. And so I think we've had about just this past cycle, we had maybe 4 programs that were paying young folks to do civic engagement work, and a bunch of others that were connecting them to paid programs, because we obviously know that young folks need to have some money in their pocket. But then we had programs and conferences that were orienting and preparing them to go out and do the civic engagement and the civic education that is needed to just turn out Black voters and let the chips fall where they may from there. And so I think that there's always an opportunity to just encourage young folks to take a chance on themselves. And what better place to do that than the NAACP?
Thank you. Stephanie, and then Pia.
Thank you, Jimel. I think mine is just along as we are getting excited and thinking about configuration. I just had a thought of maybe if we go in the direction of having one unit, we have representatives from our various locations. So just something I'm thinking about out loud, and I think I can go to Pia because she has kind of some of those configuration and processing questions that may be more directed to Jimel.
Thank you. I don't know, Jimel, did you want to speak to that? Or I think my first question is definitely aligned with Stephanie's question, which is, oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if I was cutting you off.
No, you're good.
Okay. So for an institution like Antioch with these multiple spaces and locations, what are the opportunities for us to travel together to conferences? Do college units typically like go as a group to a conference?
Yes. Yep. And so we have 2 types of conferences. We have our national convention, that's every year, and then we have regional conventions as conferences as well. Those are our Civil Rights Advocacy Training Institute, and so there may be an opportunity for a group that's closer to the West Coast to possibly attend that Western Critai, a group that's closer to the East Coast to probably attend the Eastern Critai. And so there's an opportunity to do that. You don't necessarily have to go to those things together, but a national convention, you definitely would come together as a group.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I was Jimel, before you got here, Pia was sharing that there had been a lot of work on the election. And I was just wondering if that sounds like a great way to help students get excited about the potential of bringing their dreams to the work. I wonder if you could speak to more recently, what are some of the other kinds of dreams that students have brought to this connection with the NAACP?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I can think of two groups that we were able to convene this past election cycle. Our fired up cohort who spent 4 days in Arlington doing an intensive boot camp where they kind of developed, no, they didn't kind of, they definitely did develop state plans. They stayed up, they built camaraderie. They stayed up, I would say, till about 4 in the morning one night, just building their state plans. We had brought in partners from Student Learn, Student Vote, which is one of the organizations that we work with, and they dive into the civic holidays. And so, if you guys have heard of a Vote Early Day, National Voter Registration Day, um, uh, Voter Heroes Day, things like that. Those folks came in and gave presentations, and our young people were able to just do a myriad of things over those 4 days. They did some PSAs. They were able to get opportunities with partners, where actually some of them got to go to the DNC, all expenses paid from that opportunity with SLSV. Others got to go to the Congressional Black Caucus Week in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the Student Learn, Student Vote as well. And then we had our Democracy Fellows. And so although the fired up fellows came and had the intensive boot camp, they went back into their states unpaid, just full of love for the association to do the work. But then we had our Democracy Fellows, and those were young people in our swing states who were paid to go across the state, to go and connect with different units on the ground, to do activations, whether it be voter registration tabling, whether it be concerts, whether it be connecting with the adult branches to do, some folks had like headquarters at local boys and girls clubs where they kind of kept it open for folks to come in and out. They connected with partners to do pizza. Some of them got the opportunity to be kind of stewards of their own relationships with partners. And so we couldn't talk to everybody. And so some of the students now had to step in and be, for lack of a better word, managers of these relationships, and ensuring that the finances and the materials and resources that our partners were sending to them on the ground were getting used properly. They were recording the events and databasing those that came in. And so during the election cycle, it gets a little hectic and we can't control everybody. And so we kind of leaning on the training that we've given them beforehand to kind of take them through. But during that time, we see a lot of units be themselves creatively. Some things work on campuses that don't work in other spaces, and we start to see all of those things come alive. We see parties in some spaces. We saw students doing like a civic engagement or civic education week, and then ending it with a party. If you didn't come at all to one of the events, you couldn't get into the party for free. And then they were using those funds to help pay for memberships. And so there were different ways and different creative ways that young people were staying ahead of the game for sure. They were having power hours for text banking and phone banking, and just doing a whole lot of new things that I wasn't familiar with, but was glad to see them pushing the boundaries, and also just taking the reins of their chapter identity and doing what made sense for their campus community. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. As you're saying all of this, it's making me think about the unusualness of our multiple campuses and how that can provide us with so many different opportunities for students to engage where they're at, to see the different ways that these kinds of efforts play out in different states, and also the openness to whatever people want to express through this activism or this work. I think it really sounds like it would be such a good fit for us.
Yeah.
I note here in the chat that Clarence has another question. Clarence?
No, I was simply thinking ahead. If we had a unit at Antioch, could we host like a regional AXO competition? From a selfish perspective, it would give us an opportunity to network with high school students and maybe encourage them to become college students at Antioch.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's an opportunity for you all to stand in that gap. I think Clarence has a very unique perspective on the association, and so that's definitely very creative for a college campus to host an actual competition because of the visibility and notoriety, and then obviously the connection to the association. And so that's definitely a possibility. With the different locations, as mentioned, you also have an opportunity for each group to have connections to, as mentioned, the different state conferences that in the different areas that you may be in, all while all interlocked and staying connected to one another, but utilizing the nuances from those different areas that Sarah had mentioned to get folks interested in the particular group. So there's always opportunities to connect you all to the universities and other chapters that are super close, driving distance, things like that.
Thank you. I didn't do the best job of introducing all of you today. And I know we're recording, and I just want to mention, that this panel, we're with Maria Judith holding the pieces of HR, and Stephanie Helms-Pickett holding the equity and belongingness work that we're trying to do here, and Pia having really held that anti-racist task force piece over as Stephanie came in. I think we have the folks here who have connections to these places and roles that our schools can really bring something like this to students, and really encourage all of us to think about how we support and call out inequity in first in our own university, but also in our communities. And Antioch really has had a long history of connection to our local communities in each of the places that we have campuses. So I'm looking forward to more discussion about this as we go forward. I don't see any other questions or comments in the chat for us right now. Is there anyone else who wants to ask something before Jimel maybe gets out of his car and goes to his home? Thank you for being here, Jimel.
I did have one other question that I had put in the chat, but it was probably bundled with another question. But I'm wondering, do institutions ever support that initial fee, even as individuals sign up that group charter? Have you seen institutions say, like, okay, we have 25 students, or we have 25 members of the community that are present who are willing to be the chartering group, but the institution wants to cover the fee? Or is it essential that each individual really do that for themselves?
Oh no, the university usually covers the fee. Is it 50-50? We always, college students, they never have money. And so we try the best we can to be accommodating. And that's also kind of one of the pillars for the organizing committee, is to remember that when you were a college student, and to give back financially, because we know that that's a piece, and sometimes university hoops and hurdles are a little bit difficult to get through when we need money right away. And so, yeah, but if the university is willing, always, we can always take funds from them.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I definitely appreciate hearing that answer. That's great.
Mm-hmm. And please feel free to use me as a resource as we continue to figure out what this can look like, and how we can continue to connect you all to the association. And so again, I'll make myself available for any questions you may have post this conversation. I'll follow up with a slide deck that has a little bit of our history and goes through all of the things that I talked about, with some visuals for you to kind of get an idea of what those templates look like. And then from there, I'll do a little bit more hands-on work with that founding committee group to kind of flesh out what the vision can look like for the first 5 years. And so, but that's all I have for you all.
Thank you so much for being here. I remember you saying when you started off that, sometimes it's strange to hear your own bio. And I think we've had many activists who came to their work and spoke here at Messy Conversations over the last few years. And I just wondering if there are some qualities in yourself that you might say are important to the work that you're doing that would connect with students. What are some of the gifts or curiosities or maybe characteristics of you that have been really helpful in sharing this work with others?
It's a great question. I remained authentically myself. Be true to you. The NAACP, transparently, even in the Black community, can seem like an organization that is out of touch from the inner city. I'm an inner city kid. I grew up in the inner city, and didn't grow up listening to Don Lemon on CNN, and didn't think that I'd be able to articulate my concerns politically and all of those things. And I was afraid to join or be a part of an organization like the NAACP. But being authentically myself has pushed me further than I can ever imagine in this organization. And so staying true to yourself and being honest about what it is you want from something, being genuine. I as I was developing into the leader that I became, I didn't realize it, but I put so much of my genuine self into the organization, and it gave me back so much more than I could have ever imagined. And so I'm super grateful for that. And I think that as students, we find ourselves struggling to find our identity. A lot of us are studying things to get to a certain point or a threshold. I need to get this degree in order to be here, in order to do this. And the NAACP provided me an outlet to just be. And so when I was able to just authentically just care for the community, and that was enough to just authentically care, and there wasn't a test or there wasn't a threshold or anything, just me caring was enough. I definitely saw the reward in that. And so I definitely think specifically for this endeavor, if you can just be authentically yourself and just be as genuine as you possibly can about your care and concern for your neighbor and your community, you'll be absolutely fine in the association.
Jimel. And thank you to all of our panelists for being here today and for inspiring us to think more broadly about how we connect with our vision and our social interest and investment in each other. We are at the 5:02 mark. Unless there's anything else, we'll end here for now. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next quarter at Messy Conversations.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jimel.
Thank you, Jimel, and everyone.
Thank you, Jimel. Thank you, Clarence.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really great. And it worked